been a student of archaeology for more than 30 years. I joined Freemasonry about 17 years ago when I began to realize that a universal religion was once shared worldwide by our most ancient ancestors. It flourished during a kind of golden age. But this golden age ended when the church condemned the universal religion as pagan. The last surviving professors of the universal religion went into hiding. They encoded their wisdom into the myths, symbolism, and art of history, and they placed it all under the guardianship of various esoteric secret societies. Over the centuries, as Christianity grew to empire status, these teachings began to die out. So one of these secret societies, the Freemasons, took bold action to preserve and to protect the universal religion. The Freemasons were commissioned by the church to build Europe's Gothic cathedrals. And as we'll see today, the Freemasons secretly encoded the universal religion into these cathedrals, hidden in plain sight. Pamphleteer Thomas Paine wrote, "Freemasons have a secret they conceal. Masonry is derived from some very ancient religion. At what period of antiquity or in what nation this religion was first established is lost." For many centuries, the Freemasons were rebelliously carrying a great secret through history. New initiates flourished and soon became the custodians, passing the wisdom off to the next generation. That's the good news. But the bad news is, about 2 centuries ago, Freemasonry went through what I call an unwilling transformation. The symbols were co-opted, the wires were crossed, and the history was tweaked and compromised. The whole apparatus is now broken. This explains why important Masonic symbols like the pentagram are no longer explained in the craft. The pentagram is a powerful pagan spiritual symbol. It lies encoded in cathedral architecture everywhere, put there by the operative Freemasons. But today's Masons have lost the meaning. The Grand Lodge of Columbia says, "The Masonic significance of the pentagram is controversial. While it often appears on Masonic regalia and decorative illustration, nowhere is it mentioned in Masonic rituals or lectures." The pentagram is no longer mentioned in Freemasonry because the pentagram is an example of one spiritual symbol that, in my opinion, has been stolen from the order. One of many Masonic symbols no longer explained in the craft. The pentagram has been stolen. But stolen by who? Who stole the pentagram from the Freemasons? And do they understand its magic? Note how the pentagram is rampant in the marketing of the big corporations. Have our own symbols been turned against us? Not long ago, many Freemasons stated that America has become a kind of corporate dictatorship led by a so-called invisible government. President Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Freemason, wrote in his 1913 autobiography, "Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to dissolve the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics is the first task of the day." Whoever the invisible government is, I believe they have stolen the wisdom from Freemasonry, and they're using it for their own benefit. But today we're going to resurrect some of that wisdom. We're going to see how the ancient universal religion teaches that deep down beneath your physical body, you are a soul. And in the lost tradition of Freemasonry, this simply means you are a god, a fallen god, but a god nonetheless. The famous 19th century essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Man is a god in ruins." Famous 19th century French poet and writer Alphonse de Lamartine said, "Limited in his nature, infinite in his desire, man is a fallen god who remembers heaven." And the 20th century American scholar Dr. Alvin Boyd Kuhn said, "Man is a god in the body of an animal according to ancient philosophy." Man is a god in disguise, according to this line of reason, a god with amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. This is the great secret of the universal religion. For centuries, this wisdom was safeguarded by the Freemasons and by all the so-called secret societies, including the Skull and Bones, Shriners, Oddfellows, Knights of Pythias, and others. About 20 years ago, I found that these secret societies all share the same architectural triptych pattern, formed by three spaces or doorways, with the center space or doorway clearly wider and taller than the outer two. Here are some Masonic lodges with triptych facades. Here are some Knights of Pythias lodges with triptych facades. Take a good look. Here are some Shriner buildings with triptych facades. Here are some Oddfellows lodges with triptych facades. And here's the Skull and Bones tomb in Connecticut, Yale University, with a triptych facade. No scholar has ever noticed the triptych repetition among secret societies. But some artists, like Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, have unconsciously picked up on it. The fictional stonecutters are a parody of the Freemasons, and they have a triptych lodge. Many Masonic lodges, like this one in Canada, use this same exact triptych design, right down to the eye on the center door. We also see a triptych on the facade of the Loyal Order of Dinosaurs, a Flintstone secret society created by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. It's evidence like this that shows that the triptych has a deeper meaning, a meaning undiscovered by academia and stolen from the secret societies themselves, but still visible in their symbolism. I believe the triptych is the lost secret of the Freemasons, and I believe this because many years ago I traced the triptych to deep antiquity. Victorian-era archaeologists in the late 1800s found many strange parallels shared by ancient and unrelated cultures. This led them to believe these cultures were all children of the same mother culture. Atlantis, which sank beneath the Atlantic Ocean. As the story goes, survivors of Atlantis escaped, forming new civilizations, but always carrying on the legacy of their mother culture. In my travels, I've discovered many new and undocumented parallels. I found that the ancient pyramid cultures all built what I call triptych temples. Note how the door in the middle is taller and wider than the two doors flanking it. Sorry, went too fast. Over time, I learned that the triptych temples can be found in the ruins of almost every ancient civilization, and they occur multiple times in each culture. Here's a collage of triptych temples in Mexico, built by the Maya. And here's a collage of triptych temples in Cambodia, built by the ancient Khmer people. I learned that all of these triptych temples commemorate the same universal religion that once informed Freemasonry. Just as the triptych is based on the number 3, so Freemasonry is based on the number 3. Masonic author Jeremiah Howe says that in Freemasonry, the number 3 is the most important of all the mystic numbers. Over time, I started to see the triptych not just in the ruins of ancient cultures, but in recent buildings. Are these memorials to the ancient triptych temple, I wondered? A big discovery came when I noticed a triptych forming the entrance to Rockefeller Center in New York City, built in the 1930s. Twin male and female figures fill the outer doors, flanking a god in the middle door. The god holds a Masonic compass. It was the mid-1990s, and that compass led me to Freemasonry, an age-old esoteric brotherhood of builders rooted in antiquity. I found that America's Masonic founding fathers encoded the triptych into most government buildings. I even went to Europe to study Masonic architecture directly, and I found that the Gothic cathedrals are packed with esoteric symbolism. Author Michael Howard writes, It is generally believed in occult circles that these medieval Masons had inherited esoteric knowledge from their pagan antecedents, and that this knowledge was incorporated into the sacred architecture of the cathedrals. I found that Europe's operative Freemasons even encoded the triptych into the Gothic cathedrals. Not just the triptych, note how the same architectural design pattern repeats on the Western facades. I call this mystery the Cathedral Code. It has three main elements. On top, two tall towers. In the center, a giant rose window. On the bottom, a triptych three-door entrance. The key to deciphering this message lies in a centuries-old Masonic document that you know well, the tracing board. The tracing board is actually a blueprint of the Gothic cathedral, a blueprint of the cathedral code. The twin pillars called Jachin and Boaz on the tracing board are visible in the twin towers flanking the main entrance into Gothic cathedrals. Note how the right-hand pillar, Jachin, is capped by the sun, and the left-hand pillar, Boaz, is capped by the moon. The sun and moon are opposites. The sun rules the day, the moon rules the night. The day brings light, but the night brings dark. The light brings hot, but the dark brings cold. The hot brings dry, but the cold brings moist. In this way, the sun and moon engender and denote all the pairs of opposites in creation. What's more, the sun and moon shine on average 12 hours out of 24 each day. That's exactly half each. And both heavenly orbs appear the same size in our sky. The sun is bigger, but the full moon is closer, so they look perfectly parallel. This duality forms the basis of the ancient Chinese Taijitu symbol. It depicts yang and yin, also known as the sun and moon, together inside a circle. This is very much like the tracing board, where on one side the sun caps the Jachin pillar, and on the other side, the moon caps the Boaz pillar. Author Warren Kenton, whose work has been cited by Prince Charles, says, erected by the Masons, the west front of each church had two towers representing the twin columns, the masculine and feminine aspects, the active and passive forces flowing down from heaven, called in Chartres Cathedral the Sun and Moon Towers. The twin columns of France's Chartres Cathedral are capped with iron plates of the sun and moon. This matches the Grand Master Certificate of the 16th century heretic Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake in the year 1600 for heresy. A male pillar crowned by the sun on the right side facing us, a female pillar crowned by the moon on the left side facing us. Again, perfectly matching the setup on Gothic cathedrals. The Masons went to great lengths to record the pairs of opposites teaching. Its wisdom is important to you and me, mainly because we too are formed of the pairs of opposites. Our bodies are half solar, half lunar. Freemason Harry Houdini wrote, "The sun represents the right half of the body and the moon the left half. You, me, all of us are formed of pairs of opposites. There's a devil on our left shoulder, an angel on our right shoulder. But we as Masons can transcend this duality by using the magic Masonic number 3. 3 teaches that you are more than just the twin opposing halves of the animal body. There's an inner you, a non-physical, spiritual you at the center that was never born and never dies. You don't have a soul, you are a soul. You have a body." In the ancient yin-yang, for example, yin and yang represent halves of our physical body, but the giant circle that encompasses both yin and yang represent the eternal part of you, your higher self. The geometric circle with no beginning and no end symbolizes eternity. It's called the Tao in Chinese thought. This same 3-in-1 symbolism is present in Freemasonry. But in Freemasonry, the symbol is not a circle, it's a triangle. The triangle that unites the twin pillars Jachin and Boaz in precisely the same way the circle unites yin and yang. As the triangle's apex is higher than and centered midway between its twin lower points, so your soul is higher than and centered midway between the dual halves of your animal body. the right and left, good and evil, and so on. It means you've descended so deeply into the material world from your spiritual heavenly home that you've forgotten who you are. You have amnesia. However, you're not completely powerless. By calling upon the Masonic number 3, you can perform a kind of inner alchemy. And when you do, you suddenly become aware of a human organ and sixth sense power you never realized you had. This organ is shown as a giant eye symbol on this Masonic tracing board. Take a good look. Note how the Jachin and Boaz pillars appear united, forming a triangle. This unification awakens the giant eye symbol at the triangle's apex. When you unite the opposites, a mysterious eye suddenly opens in you. Plato called it the eye of the soul. Its real name, however, is the third eye, and it once informed Freemasonry. The third eye endows its possessor with higher consciousness, expanded perception, enhanced capacity for self-healing, clairvoyance, and psychic abilities. Curiously, the third eye is barely recognized in our medical books. It's called the pineal gland, the seat of the soul, and a bridge that connects man's soul with his body. The third eye is rooted in India, China, and Southeast Asia. Here, the third eye, called Urna and Trinetra, is marked by a dot on the forehead above and between the eyes. In the ancient system of Kundalini Yoga, the third eye, or Ajna chakra, is the sixth of 7 major chakras in the body. These chakras are aligned in ascending order from the pelvis to the head. All the chakras are connected through a central channel called the Sushumna along the spinal column. Twin opposing channels called Ida and Pingala run to the left and right of the Sushumna. Negatively charged Ida is our left channel, lunar and feminine. Positively charged Pingala is our right channel, solar and masculine. Ida and Pingala correspond to Freemasonry's Boaz and Jachin columns and to the yin and yang of Taoism. Now, this may sound strange to many run-of-the-mill Masons, but not to deep thinkers like Carl Jung. Unfortunately, our Western mind, lacking all culture in this respect, has never yet devised a concept nor even a name for the union of opposites through the middle path, that most fundamental item of inward experience. It is at once the most individual fact and the most universal, the most legitimate fulfillment of the meaning of the individual's life. In my opinion, awakening the third eye is one of the lost secrets of Freemasonry. It shows you that you are divine and eternal already. You don't need a go-between in the form of a priest or a church. In 1918, the famous Dr. George Washington Carey wrote, "The all-seeing eye, this is the eye of Freemasonry, the third eye. While I am credibly informed that few Masons understand their own symbols, the fact remains that they use them." Awakening the third eye is one of the meanings of the triptych. We've seen how the twin towers of the cathedrals symbolize the pairs of opposites, since they correspond to the Jachin and Boaz pillars on the tracing board. Follow the twin towers down to the ground. The towers terminate in the twin outer doors of the triptych. These are the doors of opposites. A third, larger door is centered midway between these twin outer doors. This door unites the doors of opposites and thus signifies their balance point. The middle door represents the God within us, Jung's union of opposites through the middle path. When we take the middle path, we find our God in the center within. Now, in addition to the triptych, the pyramid culture has also used another image to convey their 3-in-1 doctrine. I call it the God-Self icon. Like the triptych, the God-Self icon symbolizes the universal religion. The God-Self icon depicts a central figure, a man or a woman facing forward, who holds in his or her hands outward from the body and symmetrically a pair of animals or staffs. These twin objects stand for opposing principles. The central figure represents the hero or sage who stands centered between them and balances them. This opens new doors of perception and centeredness of being based on the same coincidentia oppositorum, or coincidence of opposites, that we find in the triptych. The God-Self icon holds supreme importance in all ancient cultures. We see this in the Peruvian Andes, where the Inca were the last of many ancient cultures who celebrated the God-Self icon. Andean archaeologists call it the, quote, staff god. They haven't realized it, but this very same staff god symbol was widespread among Old World cultures on the other side of the planet. Here are several representations of the God-Self icon from the Old World Giroft culture in Persia, late 3rd millennium BC. Scholars of the Old World call this the, quote, master of animals. In my ebook, The Missing Link, I show more than 500 God-Self icon images created by cultures on opposite sides of the world. I set forth the idea that the God-Self icon, like the triptych temple, is the legacy of an older and more advanced mother culture that flourished in deep antiquity. The God-Self icon was created by cultures far apart. For example, these two God-Self icons were created on opposite sides of the world, one in the Americas, the other in Africa. The similarity is striking. The overall shape is a perfect match, and the details are amazing. Notice the parallel hands, elbows, squat body, and elongated staffs held symmetrically. Here's a closer look. On the right, Egypt's master masons created the God-Self icon named Bes. On the left, Tiahuanacan master masons in South America created the God-Self icon named Viracocha. Both cultures seem to be working off the same blueprint. The visual parallel is just the tip of the iceberg. Scholars tell us that the Egyptians and the ancient Andean cultures followed the same balance of duality to find the center religion. We can see that here. On the left side, we have two God-Self icons from Peru. On the right side, two God-Self icons from Egypt. Note how the God-Self icons on the bottom are holding a single serpent in each hand, while the two God-Self icons on the top are holding two serpents in each hand. On the left side, we read, Andean sensibility stresses the synthetic joining or fusing of opposing entities, sometimes around a central point or entity. And this matches exactly what we read in Egypt, where we're told by Egyptian scholar Richard Wilkinson, the phenomenon of duality pervades Egyptian culture and is at the heart of the Egyptian concept of the universe itself. But rather than focusing on the essential differences between the two parts of a given pair, Egyptian thought may stress their complementary nature as a way of expressing the essential unity of existence through the alignment and harmonization of opposites. By extending both arms outward from the body and by holding twin objects symmetrically, the God-Self icon is standing between duality, marking the center or balance point, and thus giving us the central message of the God-Self icon, to find the center between opposites. Now, almost 20 years ago, I started to see the God-Self icon in Europe's Gothic cathedrals, put there by operative Freemasons. Over time, I learned that the Masons encoded the God-Self icon in the art and architecture, in their art and architecture for the same reason they encoded the triptych temple, and that's to memorialize the ancient universal religion and to try to ensure its survival. Now, I've also noticed interesting twists on the God-Self icon, like the twin-tailed siren, shown with one leg held in each hand, forming a kind of three-in-one image. Alchemically, the two tails represent the yins and yangs of the material world, while the siren herself embodies the soul within, which is the ground of our being. Another famous twist on the God-Self icon is a figure known as the androgen. It appears mysteriously in an array of medieval alchemical manuscripts. The androgen is a variation of the God-Self icon. It shows a being with two heads, one male and one female, sun in the male right hand and moon in the female left hand. This balance of opposites is precisely the God Self icon's meaning. A more popular version of the androgyne is called the Rebus, which is a Masonic symbol. The Rebus's right hand is linked to the sun. The left hand is linked to the moon. The Rebus additionally holds a compass tool in the solar right hand, balanced by a square tool in the lunar left hand. The compass and the square. That's Freemasonry. Ohio State University religion scholar Hugh Urban described the Rebus, saying the mystery of the balance or the coincidence of opposites is the meaning of the Rebus. The Rebus is depicted standing atop a dragon as if conquering the wild beast. Here the dragon represents our lower base desires that keep us attached to the lower world. Legend says the Rebus was the first human being, perfect and divine. Unlike us, the Rebus was fully conscious of its own divine nature. The Rebus knew its inner divinity was different than its outer temporary human shell. This gnosis made the Rebus godlike. But then something happened, and the Rebus fell into becoming who we are today. To explain this fall, the ancient Gnostics, forerunners of the Freemasons, told a story in which God created the Rebus, but became jealous that the Rebus was like him, knowing his godhood. For this reason, God divided the Rebus into two sexes, two independent beings, weaker than the original and imperfect. One sex became predominantly male, with the emphasis on solar qualities like day, light, hot, fire, and dry. The other sex became predominantly female, with emphasis on lunar qualities like night, dark, cold, water, and wet. However, buried in their unconscious memory was a sense of their true essence and lost perfection, a vague memory of the past splendor when they were the Rebus. It's for this reason that humans are attracted by love and marriage, always seeking to return to that primordial state of unity, perfection, and divinity. The Rebus lives at the center of every one of us. The Rebus is your God self, your soul or the divine spark within you. This is one of the lost secrets of Freemasonry. As the primordial human, the Rebus is neither masculine nor feminine. It's neutral. The Rebus existed before the sexes were separated, hence the male and female heads, and hence the solar compass held in the right hand and the lunar square held in the left hand. These are the Masonic compass and square, and holding them symbolizes the act of balancing and uniting all the opposites, as all opposites were united in the beginning. Many medieval alchemical books depict God Self icon images. This is one from Naples, Italy, 1606 AD. The God Self icon shown here is holding twin objects, the sun in the right hand and the moon in the left hand. The head is illuminated. Many alchemical depictions link the God Self icon to the sun and the moon with a solar illumination around the head. Here's the alchemical god Mercury from the Golden Tripod by Michael Meyer, 1618. It clearly shows Mercury as the God Self icon, balancing the sun and moon. This image is from the 16th century alchemical book called The Rosary of the Philosophers. Again, sun associated with the right hand, moon with the left hand. This esoteric design has an unknown origin. It seems to be saying balancing the opposites leads to mastery, to kingship. Here's another king or master shown balancing opposites from the Azoth series of Basil Valentine, 1613. Again, sun in the right hand, moon in the left. The Rebus is your God self. It existed in the beginning when all dualities in creation were still united. In order for a human being to return to the pristine state of unity from that beginning, we must willfully perform an inner alchemy and return ourselves to the united form we took. So the Rebus is more in this sense than just a depiction. It's also an instruction teaching us how to remember our true God self, our original state of perfection, divinity, wholeness, and completion. Now, look closely at the compass and square symbols in each hand. There's no more classic symbol of Freemasonry probably than the compass and square. But very few Freemasons understand what this symbol really means. It symbolizes the higher self emerging from the lower self, the smooth ashlar emerging from the rough ashlar. Oddly, the symbol's true meaning, its metaphysical meaning, has been lost in Freemasonry. As we'll see in a moment, the compass and square they are symbols of the makeup of every single one of us. More precisely, the compass and square symbolize the inside and the outside of every human being. The compass symbolizes your soul. The square symbolizes your body. When placed together, the compass and square symbolize your soul inside your body. First, note how the compass draws a circle. With no beginning and no end, the circle symbolizes eternity and the eternal soul. Now look at the square beneath the compass. Note how the square draws a square shape. The square, and any sided four figure in general, symbolizes the material world where the body is born and dies. With four sides, and the number 4 is important here, the square has always epitomized the material world. Just think, we have the 4 cardinal points, north, south, east, west. The 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. The 4 elements, earth, air, water, fire. The 4 states of matter, solid, liquid, gas, plasma. United together, the compass and square convey the once secret teaching that we are more than just the animal body. There is a spark of divinity within us, historically called the soul. In the Masonic square and compass symbol, the compass is higher than the square. Being higher, it represents man's soul, which is spiritual and eternal. The soul existed before the body and will survive the body's death. In the heights of the soul are our highest and noblest qualities. The square, on the other hand, is the lower of the two. It represents man's body, which is physical and temporary. The body was born a short time ago and will soon die. In the depths of the body lie our lowest desires and carnal appetites. Notice how the Masonic compass or soul is drawn with its point toward the heavens as though falling from the sky, while the square or body is drawn with its point toward the earth as though emerging from the earth. This is because, according to the ancients, when we're born, the soul falls from our true home and eternal source in the heavens. It falls into a human body, a body that arises on earth. In Western religion, this is known as the fall of man and his descent into matter, with matter being the world in which we live. The compass and square, when placed together, convey exactly this fall of man teaching. In 1922, author Demon Wagstaff wrote, "There is one sign which has never changed its meaning anywhere in the civilized world, the compass and the square, a sign of the union of the body and soul." The compass and square denote man's double nature, a soul inside a body. Famous 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike wrote, "The compass, as the symbol of the heavens, represents the spiritual portion of this double nature of humanity, and the square, as the symbol of the earth, its material, sensual, and baser portion." This knowledge about the compass and square, the soul and body of man, forms the foundation of a tremendously advanced universal religion that was once common to all ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Incas. A universal religion that forms part of the wisdom, or the lost wisdom, of Freemasonry. For the ancients, the fall of the soul into the human body could be perceived as a tragedy. It means our souls have descended so far into the material world that we've forgotten about our true home in the heavens. The square and compass symbol show us the path, show us the path to remembering who we are. We know we have a body, a square. We see it in the mirror each day, but the compass teaches us about the part we can't see, we can't hear or touch or feel, the higher soul or God within, which is who we really are. To find our higher self, we need to perform an inner alchemy, which in essence is like a dying to our ego self. Unfortunately, it's not easy to do, to die to your lower self. So let's conclude today with an example of how this can be done. The key is to remember that the pairs of opposites in which the lower self lives are always changing, which means they're not really real. They're an illusion. We live our lives inside of Plato's cave. We think things are real, but they're not. All life is change. We see this on both a cosmic and planetary level. On Earth, continents shift and change shapes. Rivers alter their courses and dry up. The lives of plants, animals, and people are very short. In space, stars, planets, and galaxies spin into and out of existence. Everything has a temporary stability, giving it the illusion of reality, but eventually everything changes, ultimately showing its unreal nature. Yin passes into yang, and then yin again. For the ancients, this constant change meant that life is not real. Life is more like a dream. The 13th century Persian poet Rumi wrote, "This place is a dream. Only a sleeper considers it real. Then death comes like dawn, and you wake up laughing at what you thought was your grief." The 17th century poet and writer Pedro Calderón de la Barca agreed, saying, "What is life? An illusion, a shadow, a story. All life is a dream." And René Descartes famously asked, "How can you be certain that your whole life is not a dream?" There are remnants of this life is a dream teaching in our own culture. In nursery rhymes, for example, where arcane wisdom has been hidden for posterity, we read, "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream." And we read in the words of the immortal Shakespeare, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." Over the years, I've come to believe that these life is a dream statements have profound significance. Life is a dream, and our God self is the one who is dreaming. Essentially, what it means is that you're not your body. You're not the good and the evil flowing back and forth. There's a third and eternal part of you that's missing from this equation, a vital part that rests between opposites. This is the real you, the inner you, the eternal you, the non-physical creator you that was never born and never die. And by ensuring that these teachings were written in stone on the Gothic cathedrals and elsewhere, past Freemasons have ensured that this wisdom is available to us. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for coming today.